Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to episode 3. Don't forget to subscribe, review. You can do that wherever you get your favorite podcast, whether it be Apple, Spotify, iHeart, you know the drill. Wherever you get your favorite one, that's where we are. And of course, we are the Gift of Life. On today's podcast, we'll talk with Al Brock. He's a record rep working with both new and independent musical artists. Also works in radio at Nash Radio in Nashville, Tennessee. Looking forward to talking with Al Brock, a recipient of a liver transplant. And to let you know, the first successful liver transplant was performed in 1963, Denver, Colorado. Now, the patient survived for more than a year following the surgery. But since then, advances, surgical techniques, organ preservation, also rejection drugs, they've all changed significantly, which has improved the outcome of the liver disease transplant. So today, liver transplants are well-established treatment for end-stage liver disease with thousands of surgeries performed each and every year worldwide. And we will talk to Al Brock in just a few minutes. But first, it's not about an organ transplant, but my friend Jeff Edwards, he has a wife that they have learned has Alzheimer's. And he has a new podcast which deals completely on Alzheimer's disease. And so if you have someone in your family or whatever, you might want to check it out. It's called Gut Punched, and it learns more about him and his wife's journey into the world of Alzheimer's. Again, that's Jeff Edwards. And Jeff, I can only imagine how difficult that must have been. And that's why I think you called it Gut Punched.
It is. And that's where it came from. I bounced around a little bit with trying different names initially, and I didn't like anything. Even AI, I didn't like anything they gave me. And I finally sat down and said, okay, what is this really about? And then I remembered how I felt. And I go, oh, there you go. Because when the doctor says, I'm sorry to say that your wife has Alzheimer's, it's like somebody punches you right in the solar plexus in your gut, and you just kind of go, what? And that's where it came from. It's an emotion. And the whole illness is about emotion. And how I wanted to approach it was Alzheimer's and caregivers. Alzheimer's is the number one form of dementia, but there's so many different forms of dementia. So it was kind of like, yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll provide great information and resources because that's what we have to do. But the caregivers is the emotional part. There are so many people that I've met and talked to through the last couple of years. You know, there's some funny stories and there's some stories that just make you bawl like a baby because it's an emotional thing and it's with a loved one, whether it be, wife or a grandmother or a mother or father. It affects everybody. It affects families and it affects you in more ways than you ever thought of. My goal at this point was, look, I was fortunate to be in a city that has great program. And that's where I went the very next day when I got this information. What do? I don't know. I don't know anything about it. So I got research. Met great people. I went to classes. I took a caregiver's course. And then I thought about other people and go, wow, this is what I went through. I took the initiative, but there's some people who maybe can't. So let's share what we found and let other people tell their stories of what they went through. And that's what I'm doing. It's good.
I would say everybody has a different story, too. No two stories are ever the same.
And you know what? Everybody knows somebody who has this type of an illness. And it's getting worse as people age and all the elements. One of the big, I told you a little bit before, one of the big things is a big correlation between the gut and Alzheimer's. And you go, what does that mean? Well, research it, find out. What you eat is maybe what's going to hit you in 10 years from now. People go, oh, well, I'm not on a diet. I don't want to do this. I don't want to cut that out. But it makes a difference. It really does. In my case, with my wife, a lot of stuff that I've read, a lot of stuff that I've heard about and been in classes and stuff, they talk about routines and they talk about what you eat and exercise. You've got to use your brain. I remember the first month I bought my wife like 6 puzzles because you have to use your brain to put puzzles together. And it took a little cajoling to get her started, but then we have a couple that it were really nice and we framed them. So there's stuff that you have to do. And if you don't know, find somebody to help you. Find a caregivers group, find a location, depending on where you are. Every city's different, but there are national organizations, Alzheimer's and dementia societies and elder care. And that's what my podcast is all about. I don't do much about myself. It's not about me. It's about everybody else and how we can help. And if we can help one person, then damn it, that's what we're going to do.
That's that's why I came up with my, podcast about transplants. It's something I have experience in, something I've been going through for 21 years. And, and another reason I do mine, which I think is great with yours also. I'm informing people that maybe never had a transplant, but they learn how valuable organ transplantation is and how important it is to be a donor. If you, any way possible, be a donor. Now, what are the things you're learning that can help others as you go along with, and again, your podcast name is Gut Punched with Jeff Edwards.
What have I learned? Every day is different. Every week is different. I have a lot to learn. The lady from the Dubin Center asked me about that, and my answer surprised her. Said, one thing I knew when I got there, I didn't know diddly squat about it. I know some. I don't know a lot. I read stuff every day. I collect stuff every day, but it's an ongoing journey, and how long the journey continues, one never knows. Depending on the form of dementia that somebody has makes a difference. Whether it's frontal temporal dementia, like with aphasia, like Bruce Willis. Everybody knows Bruce Willis. Well, look how quickly he turned. Alzheimer's could last you for 15, 20 years. That's not the normal time. It's usually goes in 7 cycles, 7 stages, and then you go stage 1 through all the way down to 7, and then it's the end. So you go, okay. So you take advantage of everything you can, learn everything you can about it, and keep an open mind. I mean, we try a lot of different things. Added organic greens to drinks and MCT oil. I read about in a book. And you go, okay, did it make a difference? Sure did. I mean, that's what I'm learning. Yeah, there is a lot. There's a lot more going on than what we usually hear about. I just signed up for a newsletter this morning that I was like, oh, this seems interesting. And it's a little bit more detail-oriented medically than I'm used to, but I'm going, okay, I could find this out. One of the things that I just learned about today was that FDA, which is frontal temporal dementia, as they call it FDA, that they don't do a lot of research, and they haven't. And that particular form of dementia is very, very hard to determine. A gentleman that I know, it took him 15 years to figure out causing this to his wife, because the testing on that particular form of dementia is not very prevalent. Alzheimer's is a lot. There's stuff going on all the time. They do have a couple of drugs. The FDA pushed through. They are working on a new one that sounds a lot more promising. The problem with the drugs that they come up with, they only handle some of the symptoms. That's what we have available now. The newer drugs are supposed to be able to get into and change and eat and take care of the amyloid plaque that forms in the brain that causes the cloudiness and everything else. But there's a new one, and I don't know the name of it. I think it's in its 3rd phase of testing, and they say it's pretty promising. There was a thing on 60 Minutes not that long ago of a doctor who specialized in Parkinson's disease and also brain diseases, and he created what they call a $1 million halo. He took 3 patients, and they used ultrasound. They were able to pinpoint. He had 3 different patients in 3 different stages of the Alzheimer's, because the drug that they had wouldn't go through the brain barrier. They would inject it and you'd take it, but it would get stuck there, and all the drug wasn't getting into the brain where it needs to go because the body doesn't let it. So he found a way to pinpoint it and then place it in there, and the results were phenomenal. It was each one of the patients had results, but there was one gentleman that he cleaned his whole brain out, and it's like it went away. Now he had to relearn everything because you're messing with the brain, but still they're working on it. And that, is that going to be in my lifetime? Nah, I don't think I'll see that in my lifetime, but still it's something that they keep looking. And the biggest thing is prevention. If you can change your diet and exercise, we talked about this earlier, you can do all those things, you can push it off, because they claim that actually Alzheimer's starts in your 20s.
Jeff, I appreciate it so much for you jumping on with us again. The name of the podcast, Gut Punched. Make sure you listen wherever you get your favorite podcast, Apple, Spotify, you know the drill. Give them a review, subscribe. Very best of luck to you and your wife, Jeff. And thanks again for coming on. Al Brock, as we discuss his liver transplant. Coming up next here on The Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast.
When I was 17, my liver failed. Only the sickest people get to the top of the transplant waiting list, and I was one of them. I was supposed to go home on a Wednesday, and that very same day I fell into a coma. I don't know, I woke up on a Saturday with the liver transplant already. If it wasn't for organ donation, I wouldn't be alive today. I wouldn't be here. Someone gave me the gift of life, and now I have a future.
We have Al Brock from Nashville, Tennessee, an old friend of mine. I hate to say an old friend, a young friend of mine. That's the way to say it, right, Al?
There you go, young man.
And
yes, sir, I call everybody young man because I feel old.
It's the same way here, too. And I call all the ladies. You don't want to, nowadays you can't say anything really off color to ladies. So I always say young lady. That's what I call them too. The young
I do
ladies.
That too. I do that too. I just was in the store just a few minutes ago and buying some gas, and the lady said, "Thank you." And I go, "You're welcome, young lady." And I walked out the door. She smiled, and I'm charmer from way back.
Well, we're going to talk to you a little bit because we talk about transplants here on the show, and not only are we radio friends, which we have known each other for years, never worked at the same radio station. But I don't know, back in a Bobby Poe convention, has to be back in the 90s or 80s at least.
In the 80s, probably in the 80s at least.
Yeah, we first met. And then, we kind of got closer a little bit as you work in Nashville, because I was working at a radio station and you represent artists and, you're always trying to get airplay for them. But you had a bump in the road because, and I have talked to no one yet on this podcast that has had a liver transplant. And you did that, Al Brock.
I did. About a year ago, last week, actually. It was a year ago I think it was April 23rd. They call it my second birthday. My kids call it my second birthday. And I had it at Vanderbilt Medical Center in Nashville. I was on the list for, I think, almost 3 years. 2.5 years I was on the list. And I had liver cancer. And I never thought I'd say this, and now I'm saying it on the radio, but liver cancer was a blessing to me, because had I not had liver cancer, it raised my status on the list having liver cancer. I got a higher priority. So had I not had liver cancer, I might not have had my transplant as quickly as I did. Well, I was really lucky. So I had, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm loving the fact that I had liver cancer, because it's devastating. But in my case, it was a lucky break because it got me higher on the list, and I was able to get my transplant a little faster. It was a rough surgery. I had a hard time. I had a lot of rejection issues with the rejection medicine. Finally got squared away, and it's been about, I'm probably 9-10 months now that I've been able to pretty much back to normal. And I'd say now I'm about 99% where I need to be.
Okay, because I remember in the early days, you went back in the hospital, and I remember your daughter, who probably I would say too was also your caregiver, because I don't want to bring up sadness in your life, but I know you lost your wife, and so sorry about that. But I know one of the criteria of getting a transplant is usually to have a caregiver. So was Christine, your daughter, was she designated as your caregiver then?
Yes, Kristen's my caregiver, and you have to, the way it works in Tennessee anyway, you have to write that caregiver's name down, and they have to interview that caregiver, because that caregiver has a full-time job of taking care of you, and don't realize that at the time. You don't realize how much care it's going to be. It's not like taking care of somebody with a cold. I mean, liver cancer, liver transplant is major surgery, and it requires a lot of attention. She wound up, devoting 99% of her time to making sure I was doing what I needed to do.
That is excellent. That's what you call an number one daughter. That's
no doubt.
Al, I want to ask you another question, because I know with livers, you can have living donors and you can have deceased donors, because you can just take a part of someone's liver and it can grow inside you. Did you get a deceased or a living donor?
In my case, the way they explained it to me was the person that gave me my liver was 59 minutes dead. You have to be dead less than an hour, or the liver is no good. This person was apparently brain dead and was dead for 59 minutes, and they were able to take his liver out and salvage it, and then bring it to Vanderbilt and transplant it into me. If it had been a day or two before, the liver would have been no good, and I wouldn't have been able to have the transplant had the cancer been bigger. If the liver cancer had been 5 centimeters or bigger, that would have taken me off the list. So luck really worked for me in this case, because I had a healthy liver right away, and then I had the cancer was small enough for them to go ahead and transplant, and the cancer went away after I got the transplant.
Great, that's fantastic news. Now, I know too, you had, like I said, everybody, it seems like everybody with a transplant, I hate to turn people off, but you do have bumps in the road. There's no doubt about it. You've got rejection issues now and again. You've got other issues, depending on the organ you get. So I know that because I remember seeing on Facebook that your daughter had made a post about you being in the hospital, and it sounded like you had a little bit of a rough go after your transplant.
Well, I did. What happened was the rejection medicine they gave me caused all kinds of weird side effects. I had hallucinations, and I actually thought the nurses at the hospital were trying to kill me. I really did. And I actually called human resources at the hospital and turned them in. Turned out they hadn't done anything, and then I came home. They thought I was safe enough to go home, so I went home, and I'm laying in bed one day, and I get up, and I decided I'm going to go downstairs, and I fell down the stairs and broke 2 vertebrae in my back. My daughter then puts me back in the hospital and says, something's not right here. And they started doing all these tests, and then found out that the medicine was the anti-rejection medicine just was playing havoc with my system and causing all kinds of weird issues and weird side effects. And so they put me back in the hospital, and they fixed all that, or at least got it regulated. I went to rehab, had to go to a rehab hospital for a couple weeks, and then finally came home and started slowly getting back to normal again.
Now, how are you? Because like I said, you have a company called the Spin Doctors. It's a music group where you work with new artists, and I think you may even work with some artists that's been around for a while, trying to promote them to radio so they can get airplay. Has that affected your job, or are you back to pretty well normal with the Spin Doctors?
I'm pretty well back to normal. Yes, it did affect my job. I mean, because I couldn't do business, I lost business. So, but it wasn't devastating to the point where I went out of business. We had to pitch pennies a lot more than we normally would have, because, it's just kind of like self-employment. It's not a big company. We kind of rely on our clients to pay us. And if we don't have clients, we don't get paid. And it's one of those things. So I needed to, and she was trying her best, but she's not a salesperson. She really couldn't, do that and then work with me and then have a relationship with her fiance at the same time. So we needed to, she needed to figure out her priorities, and her priorities were for me. Mm-hmm. So we wound up losing the business. So it's back now. I mean, I would say now that in this month, I probably would say we're back to about 90% of where we used to be.
Okay, that's good to hear then.
So we're making progress.
Now, I know some record promoters, that go out and promote, are doing a lot of traveling. Are you doing a lot of traveling, or has that affected you? Because I know with me, and having a low immune system, because that is part of the deal with the anti-rejection drugs, you have a lower immune system.
Yes.
Do you fly a lot? Are you fear of flying, or how's that working out?
I'm not afraid to fly. I haven't been anywhere yet. I have a lady friend in Tampa, actually, and I want to go see her, and I haven't been able to do that. Not because I'm afraid to. I just didn't think it was the right time, being immunocompromised and all that stuff. I'm getting to the point now where I'm thinking maybe I'm going to try it for a weekend. I'll try doing a leisure flight, for like a Friday to Sunday or something, and see how that goes. And then if that works out and I feel like I'm comfortable with it, then maybe I'll start flying again. As far as artist trips and stuff, really haven't done much. We don't do a lot in the wintertime anyway, so now that it's starting to get warmer again, we've got a radio tour planned for an artist that's going to involve some pretty heavy flying, so that'll be in the next few months. And if I can't go, I have a staff member that I'll send along, but I think I can probably pull that off.
Well, I would say also, I mean, this is, I want to make sure that I tell people that listen to this podcast, if you have a transplant, this is not medical advice, and you're best to talk to your doctor.
Right.
I think after, you're out a little ways and, you get a little bit of that immune system back, I would say probably if you're wearing a mask and being careful, then you're good.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you got that speech. I never will forget, because the day I got my transplant, about 2 days later, I had my coordinator come in, scared the hell out of me. She told me how important the medicine was. She told me how important wearing a mask was, how important washing my hands, all the things they were telling us during COVID, I learned probably 20 years before COVID hit.
Yeah, me too. I went through the same thing. I got that little kit when I left the hospital. It had all that stuff in it. You know, it had a year's supply of masks, which I still have. It had a year's supply of nail cleaner and, you know, and spray and Lysol and, you know, wipes and everything else you can imagine was in that bag, that box. And they even to this day, when you go to the doctor, they'll ask, you know, are you using that? Are you okay? I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow to go just for a routine checkup because they got a little bit of a cold, and they get afraid when you get a cold because they don't want you to get COVID or, you know, because you're immunocompromised.
Oh yeah, big time. And I'll admit to you that I have been a bad boy a few times because I'm 21 years out now. And I think, you know, I don't know, I feel pretty level with things going on. And I guess I'm maybe more of a daredevil too. But there has been, and I apologize to anyone who hears this, but I have been in the hospital a few times for checkups and I don't have a mask on. And one of the coordinators or one of the, you know, transplant people will see me in the hallway. Ooh, do I get scolded?
Yeah, I'm the same way. It happens to me. I'm not a big fan of masks, but I have to wear them, obviously, because of my condition. So I keep a stash in the car, and I wear them when I go if I go shopping or something like that. I really haven't been to the mall or any major shopping trips, but if I happen to go into Walmart or something like that, I happen to have a mask on not because I want to wear a mask, but because I think it's the only way to keep myself safe.
And that's like, you know, especially, I will tell you this, in the early days, and they have told me that, you know, the longer you're out, the more you get back a little of your immune system, not a lot, but you slowly get, you know, a little back. And so, but I remember the first couple years, I wouldn't leave the house without a mask. I don't care where I was going or what I was doing. And I hate to say this.
Well,
again.
they scare you pretty good. They get you scared pretty good. And I think probably rightfully so.
Yeah. I think it's a great thing. And like I said, if I was talking to anyone with a transplant, I would suggest, like, if you're going to a busy store or even a concert, I would be, you know, wearing a mask. Of course, the unfortunate thing with us, my wife, huge Disney fan, so we live right outside the Magic Kingdom here in Orlando, not far at all. And so we do go there a lot. And, you know, there's, you know, during COVID, I was always wearing my mask, but, you know, now since I'm out, you know, I usually stay outside. If we get in line to some ride and you're inside kind of a cave or wherever where they're lined up, I'll maybe throw it back on. But usually if I'm walking around, I don't put it on, and I should.
Well, I'm the same way. I don't know if I would if I went to Disney. I used to go there a lot too when I lived in Florida. My late wife was a tour guide at Cinderella's Castle back in the 70s when they first opened. And Disney comes up a lot in conversation because Nashville is a weird analogy. Nashville is a lot like Orlando was back in the day. Nashville has gotten so many people in it, but not a good enough highway system. And Orlando had the same problem. When Disney World first opened, you know, you couldn't get anywhere in Orlando. I mean, you couldn't go nowhere. I-4 was just, you know, you might as well just stop and there was a parking lot. And I-95 was just as bad. And finally, they got that sort of fixed. Well, we have a similar issue in Nashville now. And the Disney analogy comes up all the time because Disney's like the best run theme park in the world, the way they've done things over the years, you know. And I think if they knew I had a liver issue, they would have masks to give out at Disney World. That's how concerned about safety they are.
Oh yeah, well, I remember during the COVID times, it was pretty much a ghost town there for a few months, and now it's slowly gotten back.
Yeah.
And we were there seeing Herman's Hermits. Peter Noon was in town, and it was pretty busy for that show. But let me tell you, it was all people about our age.
Us baby boomers, we all got to stick together, you know.
So, what's been going on since the transplant? Can I ask you that, or like you said, you're kind of getting back to work?
We've got a new house. We moved out of our old house, and we decided a one-level house made more sense than a two-story. So because of the stairs and all that, so we moved into a new house in September. No, not September. What did we do? In April, early April. Excuse me. We've been there ever since. We love it. It's all on one level. We can. It's a big house, so I can go from one end to the other. Like my daughter and her fiance have one end of the house, and I have the other end, and basically one big kitchen and, one big room and a nice driveway. And so we're doing that. And then I'm going to travel a little bit. Like I said, this summer, we went to a safari a couple of weeks ago for the birthdays. We had 2 birthdays this month. We had my daughter's birthday and her boyfriend's birthday. So we did, and my second birthday for my liver. So we celebrated those birthdays, and each one of them had an event to go with it. And our events were like with safari that we went to, a big dinner somewhere, and then we went somewhere else. So it's starting to get around people now, and it's starting to feel a little more comfortable. Still a little bit standoffish about big, high profile crowds. Like I don't know that I would go to a football game.
Okay. Or
I don't know if I'd go to a concert right now. A couple of weeks ago, we went to an arena football game. We sat in the bleachers. Fortunately, there weren't a lot of, I hate to say this because I don't want to bash the football team because they're just getting started, but there weren't a lot of people there. And so it wasn't like I was, elbow to elbow with somebody, so we'll see how it goes at concerts. I don't have a big show coming up that I'm going to go to, so we should be okay. That's what I'm worried about, is being in a big crowd like that.
Let me see, if you're 2 years out, now a lot of people won't know what we're talking about here, but I'm talking about CRS, and it doesn't stand for can't remember what, but it stands for the Country Radio Seminar. And
I did that this year.
You did do that. Okay, that's good then.
I did do that this year. I did that. I was a little bit. They're doing it in a hotel, and there's a lot of walking, and I'm still a little unsteady because of my vertebrae problem that I had when I fell. So I have a cane, and I use that. I walk a little bit, but there was a lot of walking to first and second floor, and I decided just to kind of hunker myself in one standard area. And people know me, so most people came to me. I didn't have to really walk too much to go see people. Next year should be a little easier, but this year was, I got to be honest, it was a little tough doing CRS this year.
Yeah, and I tell you what gets me, because Nashville is kind of a hilly area, and usually I never worked for one of the radio stations that were big time enough to put me in a nice hotel, so I was usually up the hill or down the hill and had to walk all the way up and all the way back, and usually that's in wintertime too.
Well, it's March, and it's usually very cold. This year was kind of marginal. It wasn't overly cold, but it wasn't 80 degrees either. It was probably in the 50s probably, and it was a little bit nippy. But it's all inside. The problem is it's all inside, but there's 2 or 3 levels.
Now I'll bet you too, knowing the people that know you in especially the country music business, I'll bet you had a lot of attention being freshly out of a liver transplant at CRS.
I did. I was like a celebrity. A lot of people were coming up to me asking me how things are, and I felt good about it. But I also, felt like I want to move on. I don't mind. I know they're concerned and they want to talk about it, but I want to move forward. I want to remember me as I am.
Yeah. Now I don't know if you had this it's not a problem, but I thought it was funny because basically it's not a 100% cure, but it is a cure to the problem that you have. And I had, of course, the heart transplant. And then because of the meds, I had a kidney transplant years down the road.
Right.
But I remember right after my heart transplant, people would come up to me and they'd go, "Oh my God, you look good. You look like yourself." And I'm going, "Yeah, that's what the operation was all about."
Yeah, I've had that. People said that to me too. You look like yourself. And I thought, well, good. I was trying to look like Betty Grable, but unfortunately it didn't work. The surgeon screwed up, And then half the kids will look at you and go, "Who the heck is Betty Grable?" So I just made that up. But seriously, they all tell you that because people don't know what to say. They don't know what to say, and so they're trying to be complimentary. I remember my wife passed away, and I was calling a radio station one time, and the guy said on the phone to me, "Well, at least now you can date again." And I thought that was a little insensitive, but he wasn't really being insensitive. It was just his way of dealing with something that was tragic, and he didn't know how to deal with it. Well, it's kind of the same thing with a liver transplant. They'll say, "Oh, you look really good," or "You're looking great," or "You lost 20 pounds," or, or something that really isn't meant to be, to hurt you, but isn't really a compliment either.
Yeah, I completely understand.
You know what I mean?
I did I tell you what, did you, and I haven't asked you this question yet, but I know here in Florida, we can write a letter to our donor family. Probably the toughest letter I ever wrote, but I wrote one for my heart, and I also wrote one for my kidney. Of course, I've never heard back. I do have a friend who is great friends with the donor family, believe it or not. He had a heart transplant, and they have become very close over the years. Did you write that letter, and how difficult of a deal was it?
It's funny you said that, because they have not given me that info. Apparently, that person either was anonymous or there's some kind of law in Tennessee that they can't give it out to you for a period of time. If that presents itself to me, yes, I will do whatever I have to do for that person's family, because they saved my life.
Yes.
I was planning a benefit concert. I was going to get a bunch of artists together and do a benefit concert and donate the proceeds to that family. That's one of the things I was going to do if I ever find out who that is. The person that had it apparently, was a male, and he was in my age group, or somewhere in my age bracket, and his liver was very healthy. So that's all I know. I know they don't tell you anything where he lived or what he did for a living or what socioeconomic background he was from or she was from. They don't tell you if it's a male or female.
Yeah.
They don't tell you at all. You just kind of, some states may have more open laws, but in Tennessee, it's very private unless they agree from the beginning that it's okay, and they did not.
And that's the way it is here in Florida. LifeLink is the group here in Florida, and what they will have you do is write a thank you letter if you would like, and it's anonymous, of course, obviously, who you are and who they are, but they can hand it off to the donor family, and, then they can read it, and they can decide, okay, I just want to send them a letter to let them know. And it went to the point as my friend Mike Terry, he actually has, like I said, met his donor family, and they've become very, very close. I never did meet my donor family, but as you know, I was in the comedy world too, doing stand-up comedy and touring. And it wasn't long after my heart transplant, and I mentioned it on stage, and this might have been the first, second, third show I'd ever done after my transplant. And I mentioned, I was a transplant patient and received a heart, and how wonderful that was and how thankful. Had this big burly guy come up to me and says, my brother died 2 weeks ago and he was an organ donor. And I didn't know which direction he was going to go, because it was just out of nowhere. And I'm going, oh man, did I say a joke? Did I say something that made this guy angry?
Yeah, did I offend the guy by accident? Yeah.
What's going to happen? And then all of a sudden, he hugged me like I had never been hugged before. And he said, I know you didn't get my brother's organs, but seeing you up on that stage tonight and seeing how alive you were, it made me think I was seeing my brother, and I know that he helped so many people by being an organ donor.
That's awesome. Well, I wish I had thought of that with my wife when she passed, because she had great eyes, and we always thought it'd be neat to give her eyes to somebody who can't see. She had the best eyes, and we didn't do that, and she got cremated, and here we are sitting there years later, and I get a transplant. Yes. And I thought, if I'd been thinking, I would have probably, given her organs away, because she would have loved that. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, I didn't, and so now I'm a big proponent on organ donation. I mean, I've signed up for every possible organ I can give away if I have to, because I want somebody to give the gift. I want somebody to have the gift of life that I got.
And I think a lot of us feel so blessed, and a lot of us feel that way. Hey, I've even come to the point too, because I had congenital heart disease, then I had the kidney transplant. I mean, the heart transplant, then I had the kidney transplant. I'm even one of those guys that, when I pass, I'm almost ready to just tell the doctors, do whatever you want with this body, donate, use it for science, and then whatever, is left, cremate and hand off to the family. That's kind of the way I feel.
Yep, that's kind of how I feel too lately. And the transplant changed me a lot. It changed me, made me appreciate things I wasn't appreciating, that made me stop taking stuff for granted like I used to do. I think about other people more than I used to. It's not all about me. Never really was anyway. I was never a selfish guy. But, I will admit that sometimes, I put my needs ahead of things I shouldn't have, and now I'm probably a little more attentive. I realize that time is important, and that, you only get one shot at this. Now, in my case, I got two. I was lucky.
Now, I know also you were doing some radio there in Nashville at 95.5 The Nash. Are you still there doing a little bit of radio too?
Yep. I do it on the weekends just to keep my feet in it, kind of keep, focused. I can do it in my sleep now. I've done it for 57 years I've done it. But, I walk in and plug in my headphones and shut the world out and just do my show for 4 hours, and it feels it's a good therapy for me. It actually takes the week and gives me therapy, even though it's work and I get paid for it. I still feel like it's something I'm meant to do because I've done it for so long.
I hear you. I actually did some part-time work here in the Orlando area, country station. You probably heard of it, WPCV, which is has a hell of a signal. But I started having like some blood pressure issues, so I just didn't, because I had about a 40-minute drive to get there from where I lived, and I just didn't want to do that drive every day, thinking, I could I could be a menace to someone on the road if my blood pressure all of a sudden.
Great radio station. Yeah, you don't want that, and that's the thing. Luckily I'm right downtown. I drive there, park my car in the handicap spot, walk up the ramp, walk in the studio, and plug in my headphones and let it rip. I haven't done stairs yet. The one thing I will say, we had a meeting at the radio station a while back, a staff meeting, and the main offices are on the first floor, and the studios are on the second floor. But there's a ramp at the back. But if you go in the front door, you have to go up like 30 stairs to get up to the second floor. They don't have an elevator. And I thought, I don't think I'm doing that. So every time I've gone in there, I've used the ramp. But I want to one day try taking another set of stairs, see if I can do the stairs up there. I had to wear oxygen for a long time. I have sleep apnea anyway, but I had to wear oxygen when I first got out because I had a little issue with my lungs and stuff, and a little fluid on the lungs, which I guess was something else that was non-related to my liver transplant, but I had that too. So for a while I was on oxygen, and I could walk, a while, but then I had to carry portable oxygen in the car, and I had to carry a couple of tanks at home, and then a concentrator for nights, and it got to the point where I became dependent on it, and I got used to it, and now I don't have to do it anymore. And it makes it so nice to be able to walk, a few feet without having to stop and breathe with the oxygen. It's a challenge. It really is. It's not for the squeamish.
Oh yeah, and I always, and they told me that too when I got the transplant. They go, yes, we're going to fix your heart. Yes, you're going to feel better than you have in a long, long time, but it's not a cure. And it is because of the drugs that you take and the things that you have to go through. And, of course, you're only about 2 years out. So in about another year, they'll also probably say, make sure you hit up the dermatologist about every 4 to 6 months.
Did that already.
Oh, you've done that already?
I did that already. I had a piece of skin cancer on my forehead, which they removed quickly and took it off. Luckily, that was nice. That was about a month ago. And that was that hurt worse than anything I can imagine, because they don't give you they don't really put you out. They give you like lidocaine.
Yeah.
And it's in the forehead, and they have to do it in the forehead, and it's the worst place in the world to stick a needle is in somebody's forehead. But the lidocaine went in there and it numbed it up, and then she did that, and you had to put your head in a certain position and stay that way. It's not pleasant having that surgery, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
So I did that as an outpatient.
Yeah, I go to the dermatologist now. I say, I get these things about like I get pimples, like teenagers get pimples.
Yeah, I'm okay. I just I got allergies. We have allergy problems up here real bad in this time of the year. And I would have had them transplant or no transplant. I would have had them. Just you get where your noses get real, your throat, you breathe a lot, and you're sneezing a lot and coughing a lot and all that stuff. It's just typical of it's not sick. I don't have a temperature. It's just allergies.
Now, if you do get a temperature, and obviously they told you that, make sure you get and see your doctor right away.
Oh yeah. I'm going to the doctor more so than I'm used to going, but not as much as I did when I first got home.
Now there is an advantage of having a transplant. At least for me, I noticed that if I, because they know that I have a lower immune system, so my doctor knows if I'm sick, I need to be seen. Like nowadays, sometimes you can call your doctor. Well, we can't see you for another week. I can, usually get in that day as long as I call in the morning. They know how important it is.
Yeah, same here. It's called acute care here, and that's what I'm doing tomorrow. I've got, because of this cold and these allergies, I want to make sure that it doesn't get worse. So that's why I'm going in tomorrow, just to make sure. And I've become a little paranoid too now that every time anything goes wrong, I want to make sure that the doctor knows about it.
Yes, I'm exactly there with you.
Yeah.
Hey, I think I got a cold coming on. Is there anything I should do? And so, that's me.
And they might be laughing at us, but I don't care at this point. I'm to the point where I'm going to take care of number one here,
Yeah, that's your main goal, is to stay healthy.
Yep.
And of course,
top priority. As
a transplant team, they want that liver to work for you as long as it possibly can. So, they have they have skin in the fight too now, because they are trying
it was interesting how all this went down. It happened on a Sunday morning, and I worked Sundays on the radio, and I was pulling into the radio station parking lot, and I get this call, and the guy goes, "This is so-and-so from Vanderbilt." And I thought, that's not unusual, because they're calling me all the time, changing my medicines around and all that kind of stuff. And he said, "We have a liver for you." And I go, "Well, today's not going to work. I'm on the radio in 15 minutes. And he goes, "Well, it's a really good liver. You probably should come get this one."
Yeah.
And so I called my boss, and my boss said, "Why aren't you already there? You need to go. We'll cover your shift. Don't worry about it." I get down there, and the doctor comes into me, and he goes, "I got a really good liver for you." And he leans his head back, and he says, "So let me do some magic." He said, "You'll be out of here, and you'll be out of here by the end of the week." And he chuckled and went and did his thing and came back, and I woke up, and here I was, in the recovery room. So, I mean, that's how smooth it went for me.
And yeah, that's a good story, because there are so many of us transplant patients that get the call and get all excited, and then something goes wrong where it doesn't test right or whatever, and then we got to go through it all over again.
That happened to me 3 times. Yeah, well, 3 times that happened to me.
I still think, though, because I got mine, they called, and I was in the hospital actually, and they said, "We have a heart for you. You'll be in surgery first thing tomorrow morning." So I called, because, my wife was back in Fort Myers. I was in Tampa.
Right.
I call her, like about, 11:30, midnight. "Oh, they found a heart. They're going to put it in first thing in the morning." She gets my son, my daughter, and they all drive up to Tampa. They're up there by, 6 o'clock in the morning, ready for this to happen. And then it never happened. It never happened.
Yeah, I went through that too.
But then finally, so I don't think I got the original one they were talking about. But then they said, it sounded like they'd switched off, gave that to someone else, had another one for me, because I didn't actually get it until, and I know, it's not going to be good that long. It was like the next day but they finally did have me a heart. And, I walked out of there, 2 weeks later with feeling good.
I went through something very similar. We were called in like 3 times to Vanderbilt, and I went in, and all 3 times, "We have a liver for you," and then wait. I waited all day, and then finally the doctor comes in at the end and goes, "Well," he said, "this isn't going to work. This liver's not as compatible as we thought. Go home, we'll call you when the next one comes in." So that happened 3 times, and finally, and that's why I said the timing couldn't have been worse, because it happened on a Sunday morning right as I was about to go on the air, and I didn't want to have to. As long as I've been in this business, and I know it's only a part-time job and it only pays part-time money, but I'm still very loyal to people I work for, and I didn't want them to think that I was sniffing them, by taking off 15 minutes before my air shift started. And even though, yes, you can record your show nowadays, I still felt like I wasn't getting my, I'm one of these old-fashioned guys that if I work 4 hours, I want to be there 4 hours. I want to get paid for my work. I don't want to go in there and phone it in, and so I felt guilty, and luckily I was able to. Luckily my boss was sympathetic. If he'd been a jerk, I would have had to go in there and do it. I would have passed up the transplant. But my daughter would never have let that happen. I would have gone in. She would have made me do it.
Yeah, because I as you have been in radio, and I'm one of the old timers in radio, and it's like you have a shift. You just don't call, because it's not like one of those things that, they got millions of people to choose from, or 20 million part-timers. It's like you pretty well have to be there. And so I know the feeling you're going through. Oh my God, I want this liver, but I got to go in and do my shift.
I got to be on the air. I got to talk about that. I got to talk about the new so-and-so record, and I mean, and the audience, people, the average person go, "Well, that's not important. Your liver's important." Yeah, but to me, talking up that Jason Aldean intro is important. I want to do it right. That's just how the radio guy's mind functions. All of us are like that.
Yes.
All of us old timers are like that anyway.
Yes, we are.
It's just. But anyway, I went and had the transplant, and everything went good, and I'm back to normal again, or at least getting back to normal again, and feeling like about 99%.
All right. Well, Al, I'm wishing you the very best of luck, and I call all of my friends that have transplants warriors, and you're a hell of a warrior, and I wish you and your daughter and your family nothing but good luck here on out.
Thank you. My daughter is going to tie the knot with her fiance in October, and we're all living in the same house, and I feel like I gained a son, and he's just an incredible guy, and so I'm lucky to have him, and I'm lucky to have my kids, and the rest of my family is, and all my friends.